every time you feel helpless and hopeless, the light in the end of the tunnel has become near. It is a 75-year-old. I want you to remember the Algerians. I want you to remember the South Africans. I want you to remember every liberation movement in the world. And every movement, we call it million martyrs, Algeria.
Yeah.
28 million people died in the war between Russia and Nazi Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Liberation costs lives.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Khalek, and this is Dispatches. Israel's genocide in Gaza has entered its third month, and there doesn't seem to be any end to the horrors. There appear to be no red lines for what Israel can get away with. Its army can wipe out entire neighborhoods, displace nearly 2 million people, bomb the so-called safe zones, desecrate and vandalize Palestinian homes and institutions, celebrate their genocidal intent, hunt journalists and intellectuals, starve premature babies. And U.S. officials from Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken to their robot spokespeople will gladly justify it. Because to them, everyone and everything in Gaza is Hamas and killable, from the hospitals and doctors to babies in incubators. Watching them twist themselves into knots to justify genocide, you start to think maybe they believe that Hamas is inside the veins of every Palestinian. And as Israel's destructive capacity spreads to Lebanon, you can just hear the justification that Hezbollah is inside every Lebanese as well. To help us understand the view from West Asia about the genocide in Gaza and the racist behavior of the so-called civilized West, I'm joined by Lebanese journalist Ghadi Francis. But before we jump into it, this is just part of this episode. The full interview is available to Breakthrough News members only. You can become a member at patreon.com/breakthroughnews. And as always, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification whenever we post new content. And if you appreciate this show, you can also donate below on YouTube. Ghadi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Rania.
It's so good to have you on, and there's so much to talk about. And just for our audience who aren't familiar with your excellent work and your background, before we talk about Gaza, Lebanon, and the West, can you give us an idea about your background? Tell us about yourself, your history as a journalist.
Well, for once, I didn't choose to be a journalist. I was always active. I had in mind to study something else in uni, but being in Lebanon, my life, actually, I wanted to have a voice. And this is how I became a journalist. I never studied journalism, Rania, by the way. And my background is I just started, and it took me to become a war correspondent because the region. So one step after the other, I became a really informed journalist about the region because I've been to Yemen, I've been to Iran, I've been to Turkey, I've been to Cyprus, I've been to all the places in the region. And I have exclusively gone to some points. As a journalist, this really it strengthens your exposure when you go to different places and you do some exclusives. And I was a very, really young author. I had a book on Syria maybe 12 years ago in the beginning of the uprising, when it was still an uprising in Syria, before it even became a civil war. So this is my background, basically. I've been all around the Middle East in war zones, and I have written in most of the newspapers that like the good ones. Because we have a lot of media outlets nowadays. I've been in As-Safir, Al-Akhbar newspapers. Those are the two leading newspapers of Lebanon. I have written for different places. And now I work with a global television called WION as West Asia correspondent. And I do work in Iraq. And wherever there's war, we have something to do.
Yeah. And you are always there. I want to get into some of that because you have been on the ground in so many places and have so much insight. But as somebody who, has spent your life in Lebanon, you were born and raised in Lebanon. And I know that you watch a lot of these clips and from media outlets in the US and in Europe where they describe we all hate Israel for either no reason or because Israel's better than us or because we're all just a bunch of raging anti-Semites. So I want you, from your position, to explain your relationship to Israel growing up in a place like Lebanon.
Well, if I want to go back to it, like a history of it, the first time I I was introduced to the word Israel, it was, who bombed these children? Israel. And I was a child. I'm talking about Anaqid al-Ghadab. I was around maybe 7 years old. And 7-year-old kids were killed in a UN shelter in Qana. I remember these. This is the first time I got to understand what is, like, there is something called Israel. Now, my parents and I have been brought up in a house that it has Palestine like it's not only something we are in solidarity with. We have a certain way of bringing up, and we always have considered Israel an occupation of our land in Palestine. I have never looked at myself as a Lebanese, and whatever happens in Palestine is in Palestine. This is our relationship to Israel. It is an occupation, colonial, ethno state that came and took the lands of our people. Even like my grandma is older than that occupation. So my knowledge about them was the first war when I was a kid. This is my relationship with them.
And it hasn't changed.
No.
You
So
know, yeah.
they ask you, why do you hate them? Well, let me understand which people in the whole human history, is there any such thing as indigenous people loving their occupier? Of course we
Yeah.
hate them. Of course we want to. Where did indigenous people love the occupier? Only those traitors did back in the history. I'm talking about each and every place, not even, not the Middle East, not Muslims, not brown people. No, no, no. Where did anyone like their occupier? Did the Irish like their occupier? Did the Americans like when they
Yeah.
had someone else choose for them? Did any people in the world, in history, like to be occupied and killed? Of course, we hate our occupier. We will resist our occupier. We hate them. And we don't like to kill them. But here it's either you kill or you get killed. And they came after us. We did not go after them in Poland or in Germany or in Russia or in America, where they actually were born, where they actually have roots and ancestry. We didn't go after them in their homes. They came to our. Wouldn't you defend your home? I'm really like, when they say you hate Israel, you're anti-Semite. We are Semites. How can I be an anti-Semite? I mean, this is really idiotic at that point, because even saying free Palestine is anti-Semitic. Whatever, so whatever. Okay, you choose what you want to say, what you want to make a propaganda about, and we choose how we want to live. At that point, Rania, I genuinely don't care anymore, because I know that people know now. All around the world, they know now. And we're seeing the failed propaganda and the failed victim, the victim image they're trying to make. So everybody knows the truth now. I don't really need to get to be as angry at that as I was maybe 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. Israel's done a huge service for the world in many ways by showing who they actually are. But you know what? It's really interesting when you talk about the way you view Palestine, because people always think that before they know that my family's actually Lebanese, they think I'm Palestinian, like Americans. They always just assume that I'm Palestinian, but I'm also like, well, I don't really see myself as different, just because like they don't understand these colonial borders, like Palestine, Lebanon, Syria. It's like, I mean, we all have family in each of these places, because a bunch of Europeans came and drew borders. And so when people are like, oh, you're not Palestinian, you're not even Muslim, then why do you care about it? I'm like, it's still like my part of the world. But anyways, I want to move on for a moment to the issue of the West, because, oftentimes we have these white people who get to pontificate and tell us what they think about our region of the world. But I like the idea of, us and actually people who are born and raised in this region getting to give their view of what they think of the West. So I want to switch it around for a moment and ask you, as somebody who's from the Middle East, who's born and raised in Lebanon, what is your view about what we're witnessing in the West right now in terms of just the insane level of racism we're seeing from Western officials, and just their almost enthusiasm for the genocide we're watching unfold? And how's your view of the West, because of this, shifted at all since October 7th?
I'm not really surprised. I'm not really surprised, because if it weren't for the West in the first place, we wouldn't have an occupation called Israel in our region. So the West actually did that. It's really time for us to differentiate. They call it the Jewish state. No, the Jews are saying, not in my name. It's not a Jewish state. It is a Western colonization, and the Jews in Israel are the actual human shields. So, so our problem is not with the human that is sitting on my land in northern Palestine. He's not my problem. My problem is the system that bought him. You know, some people are very innocent. They don't know where they are. They don't know what they're doing. And we've seen on social media how many have like reverted. If you've seen on TikTok, many of the activists that were brought and fed this propaganda from the United States in particular, they came out and they spoke about it. And they said, I'm an ex-Zionist and this is what I think. Countless. We're seeing that. So my problem is not with these people that took my land here. In the first place, the West brought them. Because the West is the anti-Semitic that did not want to take in the actual refugees because the West, Europe, killed them. You know, we are paying the price. We are paying the price, which is actually a genocide, for the genocide twice. You know, they killed the Jews and they brought some people here to kill us as well. And it's very similar genocide. So when we talk about the West, I think the West is changing. The people are changing. I don't think there's such thing as West and East anymore. Because I've seen Japan, I've seen Australia, I've seen China, I've seen Russia. There's a very big a monopoly in the world, and everything is changing. You know why? Because there's a new generation, there's a new train of thoughts, there's a new economy. And now one click, wherever you are in the world, is a voice sometimes on a social media platform. So I think we should not think about the West as something that is definite. I think they will change as well, because these people that are in the streets are voters. And the people that are gaining awareness are voters as well. So if you want to tell the West what a Middle Eastern person thinks about them, I think every country does what comes in their good. I don't have a problem with them being greedy, wanting our oil, our resources. Okay, I have a problem with us not being strong enough to defend ourselves. Because if they weren't strong enough, someone else would have come to their land and done the same thing. From the dawn of history, it has always been this kind of rivalry between empires. But the thing is, it has become so we are, when they tell you about the kings of Europe, and they used to put like heads and burn people and, you know, and torch people and put heads on the knives and whatever that well, it's happening, but in a different way. Now there's no more such thing as international law. This is all has just fallen, and there is the hegemony, which is not one king or one royalty anymore, but this hegemony is the one that's doing the same kinds of crime. Now we are the victim for this turn of history. But yeah, I don't think any victim remain the victim forever. We will liberate our land. The West will do what they want. In the end, we will liberate our land.
It does, though, seem like I mean, you're not surprised, but I've been personally, I guess, a bit stunned by just how far the Biden administration and its various spokespeople have been willing to go to justify everything that Israel does. Like, it seems like they're totally willing to let Israel just like wipe out Gaza. And I actually want to show a clip real quick, and just I want to see your reaction to it. Maybe you've already seen it, but this one really, I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm just going to play part of it. This is, I believe his name is Matt Miller. He's, I want to say the State Department spokesperson, but at this point, they all just become the same person to me. State Department, White House spokespeople, they all look the same to me. They just look like a bunch of robots who all they do is just blab about on and on about how it's okay that Israel kills. But this one really stunned me. Here we go.
Yeah, Saeed, go ahead.
So I understand you correctly. You're saying that the killing of 700 Palestinians over a period of 24.
Saeed, I always like when I use my own words, not when you try to put words in my mouth.
I want to understand what you said properly. You said that we have seen improvement. I'm asking you directly. You think that the killing of 700 people in 24-hour period is an improvement?
So
I'm just asking you to say yes or no.
I don't
in
think,
accordance to what you said.
So, Saeed, I don't think you were listening very closely to what I said.
I was listening very closely.
Well, clearly not, because what I said
Right.
is we have seen improvement in their plans for Khan Yunis, their plans for the South. We have seen them evacuate specific neighborhoods rather than entire areas. So the numbers of displaced persons will hopefully be lower in southern Gaza than it was in the north. But when it comes to results, we are going to monitor it very closely. And I think I was pretty clear about that. And I think the secretary was pretty clear about that on Thursday.
I have to mute this guy because he's making me mad. I'm just curious.
Even that part, the 1,200 people, turns out IDF killed according to Haaretz.
Well, yeah, that's right. We don't hear anything about that in American media, though. They haven't said a word about the fact that Israel bombed its own people. But I'm just curious, like when you see clips like that, because it makes my blood boil. It's like Hamas lives inside the veins of every Palestinian or something like that makes them killable. That's why you can kill babies, because Hamas is inside every baby. I'm just curious your response when you see those sorts of statements from American spokespeople.
I don't want to be answering to all of your questions by that did not surprise me, but that doesn't surprise me because the Biden administration, once they stepped into office, I did a research about 12 personalities: Blinken, Austin, Avril Haines, Victoria Nolan. Do I need to explain further? Avril Haines was tried for attacking civilians while attacking Al-Qaeda. That is an Obama officer. She was, just go Google what she's been through. Avril Haines. Anthony Blinken, what he's done. Where does he work? Why is he a CEO of an arms company? Who is Victoria Nolan? And what are her links to the weapon companies as well? As per Lloyd Austin, where does he come from? And what has he done in the Middle East in the past 20 years? These are 12 eagles of the war in the Biden administration. This is what I called them in Arabic. I'm trying like a very lousy kind of translation. But really, the people, even the Ministry of Finance, they have 12 very important positions in the administration. And I think Joe Biden has showed the world how capable he is as a human. And I don't like to be an ageist or a sexist. But we all know that he's not the person making the calls. There's an administration. The United States of America runs in an administration, and a very solid and powerful one.
You're right. And maybe it's naive on my part. I just like have a hard time thinking like, how does this person spend his days going to work, justifying starving babies, and then go home and have dinner with his family? It's
because they tell themselves that it is not a bad thing to do. You know, I've read a book after the genocide, the Nazis. They have been really researched, and I think in such times when another genocide is happening and it's actually televised, it's good to read into that. I was reading something, Rania. You know, there's a psychological effect. Nobody thinks they're a bad person, even those that are slaughtering babies. They think they're freeing the world, maybe. Well, this is why our war is a propaganda war. Poor thing. Do you really? I mean, this idiot that got killed yesterday from the IDF. Are you a serious parent giving your daughter a birthday present of killing kids? What kind of daughter are you raising? So now he's killed. Hamas has killed him. Well, Hamas is bad. But him sending his very young daughter a video about how he's gonna kill other kids, that's not bad. That's great, actually, according to the West.
According to the West, there's 40 beheaded babies that we have to care about.
We don't know who are they, by the way. And the raped women. Why don't they come out and speak? Why is it only like someone told me? It's really like they do in my village. You know, we have a small Lebanese village. I'm sure you know. Everybody knows about. It's like sarsara. It's like gossip in the village. Well, someone told me that they stripped her, and not trying to make rape something normal at all.
It's not.
But we are journalists. We need proof. We need names. And even after those, for some people, they say, it's made up. If it's a Hollywood actor, we don't buy that. With evidence, you know, if it's a powerful tycoon. I mean, we all know what happened to Epstein. He was still, everyone caught him, and he was still outside, and he was still out. And in the end, he went to prison, but he can go like he has a time. He goes 6 hours to prison, 6 hours to home. And he was not, he was trafficking people, even more than rape. So sometimes it's very cool how they want us to believe that they raped women because, and the Guardian puts 3 sentences, the Guardian, journalism. We're journalists, Rania. It's all gossip now at that point. Where are the beheaded babies?
But you know what we do have proof of? We have proof of stripping men down and taking images of them. And we have many Palestinians coming forward after being released from prisons saying they were sexually assaulted or threatened with rape or had their family members threatened with rape. And none of that ever makes it into any mainstream media
and
headline.
We are from a community, Rania, that even if you're raped, you don't speak out as a woman.
I mean, I think that's pretty normal around the world.
I'm sure. Just like I'm sure my name is Ghadi, I am sure women have been raped. Israeli IDF has a problem with actually raping their own. And we've seen investigative reports about that. Do you think they wouldn't rape women?
I mean, according to CNN's Dana Bash, Israelis don't rape Palestinian women. She actually said that. She said Israeli soldiers don't rape Palestinian women.
I'm asking you about Hamas. In fact,
I already answered your question, Dana. I said it's horrific, and I think that rape is horrific, sexual assault is horrific. I think that it happens in war situations. Terrorist organizations like Hamas obviously are using these as tools. However, I think we have to be balanced about bringing in the outrages against Palestinians. 15,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes, 3/4 of whom are women and children.
And it's horrible, but you don't see Israeli soldiers raping.
Well, Dana, I think
women.
we're not.
She made that statement and nobody challenged her because it's also a racist view. It's a very racist view. It's the idea of these brown savages can't help themselves around white women. So of course they did mass rape, but these white Israelis, they would never touch a disgusting Palestinian woman. However, I want to shift to Lebanon, where we are talking from at the moment. And I'm sure you've been watching the news. There's been this kind of rise in threats from the Israelis about what they're going to do in Lebanon. And now there's some panic among the Lebanese again, which is kind of the way it's been the last 2 months, that Israel's preparing some kind of major escalation in the north to fulfill their, we got to push Hezbollah past the Litani River, like insane agenda. So they're threatening to do to Lebanon what they've done to Gaza. They're saying we're going to turn Beirut into Gaza. They've been saying that for forever. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think the Israelis would actually?
We're waiting for them, Rania. Waiting for them. We're waiting for them. Let them come. If they can, why not come? In the year 1982, they were drinking coffee in Al-Hamra. And there was a student. He wasn't 20 years old. He doesn't have a weapon. He just went, he knocked the door relentlessly, give me a gun. He got a gun and he killed the 3 soldiers inside Beirut because they were occupation forces. That's year 1982 when they came to Beirut. We are very ready. We are the only people who actually beat them. They tried for 33 years. They bombed from the air, from the sea, from the ground with their tanks. Well, Google what happened to the Merkava when they thought about coming to southern Lebanon. Oh, it was really something tremendous. We discovered new ways of burning the Merkava. Even like now, after the clips of Al-Qassam, I mean, we cannot really brag anymore, but we did it very long time ago. So we really showed them their lesson. They cannot come. If they could, they would. When they could, they did. They can't. And they know exactly that Hezbollah that beat them in 2006, they call it Hezbollah, the world calls it Hezbollah. Every time I say it, I like to call it the Lebanon resistance beat them because Lebanon won over the occupation that kills anyone because they're Lebanese. They don't think who's inside the building and they bomb it. They don't like the rest of the Lebanese and hate Hezbollah. They never did. So Hezbollah is basically the group that defends Lebanon because Lebanon, although it has a state, it doesn't have the strength in the state. So if they could, they would. But today I was just telling a friend, a Palestinian friend, she's telling me, aren't you really worried? Just something similar to your question, Rania. I said, not only I'm not worried, although I have like 1,000 issues with Hezbollah as a political entity and ideology, I am at a stage where I genuinely trust them. I genuinely trust their strength. I genuinely trust their capability to protect us. And when you look at Lebanon, I know you know, when you look at Beirut and you see, well, we don't fear the war here. We don't feel the war when we are clubbing. We don't feel the war when we are shopping. We don't feel the war in Lebanon. Only the southern part of Lebanon feels it. You know why? Because there's this resistance. Because we're lucky enough not to feel it. Because there are strong men sitting under the rain and protecting us. So it's time to be grateful, you know. Regardless of the politics, it's time to be grateful. I can tell you, I genuinely trust that the Israelis cannot, not would not, cannot. They cannot win and they will never win over Lebanon. They are not winning over Palestine, for God's sake. And Gaza is besieged. Did you ever see them really, did you ever see them kill any Hamas? We saw them doing a video clip. It was more like a video clip for music video or something. They fought with a wall. And even the Israelis were there, like, show us the fight. You're fighting with a wall. I could see the comments. So they couldn't even kill any Al-Qassam person, any Hamas actual person. For 60 days of relentless bombing over ABC. Wallah, innahu Lubnan ya Azizi in Arabic. It's Lebanon, dear. They can't.
Well, also, I'm curious, okay, should the war escalate further? You know, Lebanon has a very polarized political system where you have people who, on the one hand, they complain, oh, Hezbollah is not doing enough. What kind of resistance is this? And then others complain, Hezbollah is doing too much. You know, they're going to drag us into war. There is concern that if this escalates further, you will see a huge internal divide in Lebanon, which I don't think is untrue. I guess, how would you very briefly explain that divide? Because Lebanon can be quite a confusing place.
I can really, like, in a nutshell, before there was anything called Israel, there were Lebanese people working for the Zionists. I can refer to a book called Al-Mataha al-Lubnaniya. It is an Arabized version of Israeli studies and Israeli own biography from these people and Zionists about the Lebanese relationships with the Zionists since 1918 till 1958. And I can show you the book. Maybe it's like the blue one here. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, there's a lot of books. Maybe there is a blue book.
No.
There's a couple blue books.
Yeah, that's the blue book. Exactly. So according to this book, before there was even something called Israel, they were a part of the Lebanese. They were dreaming, and they were like the Europeans convinced them that there would be a Maronite state or a Christian state next to a Jewish state, and you live happily ever after like the West. So some people bought that, and they were really lobbying for it. And some people actually funded and helped and sold lands and etc. The Lebanese, what I'm trying to tell you is there has always been a part of Lebanon that is pro-Zionism.
Yeah, it's true.
This is not new. There was, at a certain point, there was a president that was going to become a president. And he had pictures and meetings with Ariel Sharon while Ariel Sharon was killing kids in Lebanon. So he was part of that, armed by that, trained by that. We still have Lebanese forces who are openly saying every time in every interview when asked, yes, we were trained in Israel. So is it really weird? No. Is it really new? No. Does it really matter? No. Is it relevant? They've got ballistic missiles. Let them talk in politics. I think this is what Hezbollah would say. Let them talk in politics. They've never liked us in politics. I mean, the actual state of Lebanon has never been pro-resistance. Only one president was really openly that, and he was basically taught a lesson. I mean, I'm talking about Emil Lahoud, and then I'm talking Michel Aoun. When he came, there was so much compromise. We cannot now speak about this. But in general, very, very, very few times that the Lebanon state was actually pro-resisting. They just do this formula and they say we are with the Arab initiative of two-state solution. They just do the poetry that they need to get the day going, you know, but they don't really care.
Well, I wanna shift to Gaza because I think it's really important that you've actually visited Gaza, and you know we're told that Hamas is hiding inside of everything. So I'm just curious, as a journalist who's been there.
Do you want to see the tummy?
Yeah, did you see? Actually, I mean, you have seen.
I actually have a hard disk here. I was looking at my footages. Do you want to see the tunnel?
The tunnel, you have the tunnel. Yeah, show me. Is the tunnel under your chair? Because as soon as they start, if they do start escalating further in Lebanon, they're just going to say everything's Hezbollah. Everything's a Hezbollah tunnel. Everything's a Hezbollah hospital. They'll do the same exact thing, the same exact formula. But you have been to Gaza. Go ahead.
I was referring to the tunnels here. I have a footage with me in the office from me going inside the tunnels, and you can see what the tunnel is actually like.
But the fact that you've been there, I mean, not very many people have been to Gaza. You went there, I think you told me it was like the year, I want to say 2012?
January 2013.
Oh, 13.
In the beginning, yeah.
I'm just curious, like, what was your experience? You actually did see a tunnel. I think you went through one. You walked through one. You talked to people. Was it, I don't know, just your thoughts when you see what's happening now, and then kind of reflecting on your time spent there.
I saw two tunnels. I entered via a tunnel and I exited via a tunnel. And it's not for the fun of it or because I wanted to as a journalist, but because the Egyptian regime doesn't allow us to go to Gaza. If you think the siege is new, no, Rafah is always closed. I went not because, exotic experience. I had to get into Gaza. I had to go in the tunnel. And there were some tunnels that are used all of the time by civilians to get medicine, to get out of the prison. And everybody knows about them. Some people say it's 800. Some people say it's 1,200, 1,200. I'm talking more than 10 years ago. Okay, we're saying exactly 11 years ago. I mean, next month it will be 11 years ago. So the tunnel is, I just went to a place and I waited in the room and we entered into Gaza. How was the experience in Gaza? Up so far, I've never seen anyone smarter than the people I've seen there. They're really very smart and very educated, and they crush every stereotype you might have about them. They have 4 big universities in such a small area because it's like 45 kilometers and 7 kilometers width. So that's it. There is 4 universities, and what surprised me was the old part of the town, very beautiful architecture, and that was all there. Now, when I look at all the rushes, Rania, it eats me in the heart that everywhere I've been to is not present anymore. Al-Rimal, Jabalia, because I actually stayed at a colleague's place in Mukhayyam, Jabalia. And Beit Lahia, which is like the actual place they took first, I also have been there. So it's very small. I have memories in each and every part of Gaza, and I have friends that have died, and I have friends that are in distress. And regardless, if you're a human, it touches you.
Yeah.
But I think because I went to Gaza, I'm lucky because I saw it and I can narrate. And I would really like if you can, because I have a lot of emotions and a lot of information to share. I would really like if you can narrow it down to what part of my experience you would want me to expose.
Well, when we think about Gaza, and this is maybe more of an abstract concept, but because you've been there, I guess I'd want you to respond to this. There's a lot of talk among people in the West. You'll hear often, why did Hamas do this on October 7th? Like, they knew the response was going to be crazy. Why would they risk this? But when we look at Gaza, Gaza's not just some normal place that's under occupation. It's been marked for elimination. You mentioned a siege. It's been under siege since 2005, 2006. It's been people in Gaza were put on a diet, and Israel literally says that they go in every few years to so-called mow the lawn. Every few years, Gaza is subjected to a horrific military campaign. This is the worst we've ever seen, obviously, but it's like asking people who are living there, because you met people who are living there, they don't get to leave. They're in a prison. They've turned Gaza into a prison. It's like these people were marked for death. And so you're telling them, just keep living that way and don't fight back. And then you're going to blame them if they do fight back for the response from their psychotic genocidal occupier. So I guess, how do you respond to that? How do you respond to that, having been there? The idea, how dare they launch this crazy campaign? It was reckless. They knew it was going to bring this wrath of Israel. You know what I mean? How do you respond to that?
Well, I genuinely think that on the day, something messy happened. I don't think that Al-Qassam brigades wanted to do everything that happened. And, we've been hearing reports about a lot of mess that happened. Some civilians entered, other groups entered. So every time we say October 7, I just like to put in some more information about that day. Even the RAF, maybe, I think it was supposed to be a clean hostage swap operation, like the one that Lebanon did. And it turned messy, and it was accelerated and intensified by the IDF exchange, which basically exacerbated that exchange on that day and killed so many people. So back to that. People aren't on a normal life in Gaza, just like you said, and nobody wants to leave everything and go live somewhere else. They chose to stay, they chose to resist, and they know their destiny. What the people cannot understand about us humans, that we are, it's like it's die or resist here. We don't have the luxury to choose. Especially people in Gaza, I cannot forget how the basic necessities of life were something very big, and the amount of kids. But there's something also, their awareness, their mental strength. I think because of what they're living, they will teach the world new lessons about survival, and we will hear a lot of stories. Like, up until today, the humanity says the Stalingrad, the Vietnam, the siege. Humanity will talk about Gaza. No medicine, and the doctors and the everything. So, no, people are not living a normal life, and their land is occupied. And maybe Gaza has, as bad as life is in Gaza, as bad as it is as besieged, they are the freest. They are
Oh,
living their
interesting.
reality. They are living their reality. They have nothing to fear. Americans are afraid. They are afraid of death. They're afraid of, I don't know, getting fat or getting thin or losing their money. Okay, they have different fears, different lives, different styles. They would not maybe understand. Like, what do you want? Okay, do you understand how much there is a dense population? How bad it is over there? Do you have an understanding that even they don't have kinds of food that they want. They have whatever is left there, and probably the Israelis send them the things expired, the bad chicken, this is what they do. And you see, you have all these but meanwhile, in Gaza, no Israeli can come and tackle you. No Israeli can come and imprison you. So this small prison made its own community that was able to breed such big resistance. But we tend to forget that the West Bank, the kind of struggle and the kind of agony that the Palestinian lives under direct occupation is very tragic as well. Every day when you go to school, every single day, every kid that goes to school gets searched and tackled and touched and harassed. And they pass on multiple checkpoints. So maybe people in Gaza used to feel that they are the Palestinian refugees that came from other parts of Palestine, but they did not need to deal with their enemy. They did not need to take papers from their enemy. And they thought of their prison as the freest of the Palestinians in the time being. I mean,
Yeah.
let's talk about the Palestinians abroad. They are in pain. They cannot speak. They lose their jobs. They are dehumanized every single day. I'm talking about my Palestinian friends all across the world. What they're living as well is so big. So I mean, when you ask me now as a Lebanese, do I prefer to ache here or to ache in this? I prefer to be here in my land rather than live outside with this different kind of pain as well. So people in Gaza are stayed in their land. They don't deal with the Israelis. This is why they bred such resistance, and this is why they are cracking down more and more on the Palestinians in the West Bank and in the occupied parts of Palestine. I know you just told me they will mow the lawn. Yes, this is how they think. This is what Netanyahu is thinking. But you know what my problem is? My problem is with journalists, Lebanese, or any humans that say it in their analysis just very easily, and they carry on with the next sentence. Some people are saying mowing the lawn was like as if we're talking about a diplomatic issue. It has become what kind of dread it is. It has become so simple to say I will eliminate 100,000 people every few years, and how bad it was for one human who died in like unknown conditions, but her name was Mahsa Amini. She was so precious to everyone.
I still is. She still is. You still see more attention or care for her death than you do for 8,000 Palestinian babies.
You know what kind of genes she has? And why is she different as a human than you, me, or any other human that can be killed while sleeping in their home? The 20,000 plus, I don't know, they might be like 25,000. We're just throwing numbers because they're more under the rubble. There are places where nobody has reached. I'm talking about testimonies from inside Gaza. So here we are.
Here we are. And I want to ask you also about the issue of journalists. I mean, there's two aspects of this. One is the fact that Israel is actively hunting journalists and their families to kill them in like a psychotic Hunger Games style atrocity. And then on the other hand, you have journalists outside who are under a lot of pressure. I'm not trying to compare these two things at all, but they're not able to speak openly about what's happening because there's so much pressure, especially if they work at corporate outlets in the West, because there's so much pressure to be pro-Israel. You'll lose your job. There's repercussions, and possibly not be able to get another one. So I'm just curious if you can comment on these two things when it comes to the issue of journalism.
Well, first of all, we are really aching for now. There are 82 journalists, 3 of which are Lebanese, and every time we see that, I see a blue vest with blood. My whole body aches because this is our vest. We are journalists, and this is us. I cannot differentiate between me and any colleague that is being slaughtered like that. I cannot forget this kind of pain as long as I live, because this is like, what did we do wrong? What did they do wrong? They are the actual truth. You are killing the truth. So I just needed to say that sentence and then move on to the other kind of journalists that are trying, and the ones in the corporate. It's a personal choice that you have to make, Rania, in life. Some people don't have the luxury to become jobless. Some people like to work in independent places like yourself. Some people stay in corporate and lead their own fights like myself. Some people stay in corporate and just stoop because they need to, and it's their own choice. It is a personal choice. I wouldn't stay one day in the BBC. I wouldn't stay not single second. I wouldn't even apply for a job in the CNN. It's shameful to work for such a place. It's shameful, I swear to God. So that's me. I would understand. Maybe I don't have, like, some people really cannot, like, stop their lives and become jobless. I would understand them. But also some people need to, like, do sex work to live, and some people do cleaning work to live. These are personal choices. I would rather die starving without a job, me and my 20 kids if I had, and not work for someone who thinks it's okay to kill me. Because if this is equivalent to working for your killer, it's the same. You know, and I think we have discussed previously, and I've showed you the discussions that I make. I try to discuss every single, I do not come on air and say something that I don't believe in. Not for money, not for status, not for anything. But maybe if I had a sibling or a parent that is sick and needed the money, I don't know. I cannot put myself in other people's shoes.
Yeah. I want to also ask you about the issue of the Arab countries. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear the rest, you can access it by becoming a Breakthrough News member at patreon.com/breakthroughnews.